Hello there, and a very warm welcome to this explainer. Right then, gather round. Once upon a time, in the often daunting kingdom of academia, the very idea of writing a comprehensive business research paper seemed, well, rather like a monstrous fire-breathing dragon you had to slay all on your lonesome. But fear not. Our goal today is to break down this seemingly terrifying process into a completely manageable step-by-step journey. Think of this explainer as a grand adventure, where we're going to equip you with the map and compass you need to conquer your academic quest with flying colors. But why take on this quest at all, you might ask? Well, a rigorously crafted research paper isn't just a stuffy academic exercise. It's the ultimate treasure. It grants you the power to uncover hidden truths, command respect in the scholarly realm, and forge actual, real-world solutions that can save entire enterprises from absolute ruin. So let us begin our tale. Imagine, if you will, a rather dark cloud looming over your once prosperous village. Suddenly, the kingdom's sails are tumbling down a hill, or perhaps your very best knights and skilled workers are fleeing the castle, leaving you with sky-high employee turnover. How exactly would you solve such a massive, ambiguous mystery? In the real world, you can't just wave a magic wand or rely on mere guesswork to save the day. If a ruler relies purely on hunches, they risk squandering the kingdom's precious gold, misdirecting their knights on fool's errands, and ultimately watching the castle crumble. You need a highly structured scientific methodology to peel back the layers of the curse and uncover the absolute truth. Here is our roadmap for the journey. 1. Identifying the management dilemma. 2. Formulating the research question. 3. Reviewing the literature. 4. Peeling the research onion. 5. Selecting techniques and procedures. And 6. Reporting the final results.
Chapter 1. Identifying the management dilemma.
Our story begins by distinguishing the visible smoke from the hidden fire, and this brilliantly illustrates our path through the enchanted forest. Notice the very bottom of this funnel. Our journey starts right here with a broad symptom, the dilemma. This is the panicked shout in the dark. As we travel upwards through the funnel, we systematically clarify the question, we carefully design our overarching strategy, collect our precious data, and finally arrive at the grand castle at the top, the management decision. It's a spectacular visual roadmap demonstrating precisely how a vast, terrifying problem narrows down into an actionable, concrete truth. Let's see how this works with a little fable about a restaurant chain. Our management dilemma, the visible curse, is a sudden drop in premium entree sales. The management question asks the rather desperate, broad query, how on earth do we reverse this? But to actually solve it, our brave researcher must translate that panic into a precise research question, something like, does recent health risk news explain this drop? Now, the jump from that broad management question down to specific investigative questions is often the most treacherous part of the quest because it requires turning abstract fears into concrete metrics. We finally break it down into investigative questions like statistically measuring the patron's price sensitivities. We've effectively moved from a panicked shout in the dark to a highly specific, measurable quest. Chapter 2. Formulating the research question. Having identified the beast we're hunting, we now must narrow our focus so the quest is actually manageable. To keep our hero from wandering aimlessly, we use 4 magical-looking glasses, or strategic lenses. First is aspect, looking at the problem through a single theoretical perspective, like cognitive psychology. Then components, breaking the big problem into smaller, digestible pieces, like isolating specific types of employee morale. Third is place. This is terribly important. Perhaps we only want to search within medium-sized manufacturing enterprises located strictly in the United Kingdom. Restricting the place saves the hero from absolute failure, because trying to study every enterprise in the entire world would take 100 lifetimes and yield hopelessly muddled data. And finally, type, focusing our search on a specific demographic group, like remote administrative personnel. These lenses ensure our project doesn't become an impossible, sprawling fairy tale, but stays academically viable and sharply focused. Chapter 3. Reviewing the literature. Now, every good hero must visit the ancient library to learn what those who came before them have already discovered. But remember, we aren't just summarizing old tales, we are critically synthesizing them to find a genuine gap in the knowledge. To search this vast library without getting hopelessly lost in the stacks, we use a powerful spell called the Prisma protocol. It involves 4 strict trials. First, identification, where we use Boolean searches in grand databases. Think of Boolean operators like AND or as specific incantations you type into the search bar to summon only the most relevant scrolls whilst banishing the rubbish. Second is screening, where we quickly read the abstracts and toss aside irrelevant texts. Third is eligibility, where we read the full texts to ensure they fit our methodological needs perfectly. And finally, inclusion, where we gather the surviving, high-quality papers for our final synthesis. It's utterly brilliant because it ensures transparency, reproducibility, and helps eliminate cheeky publication bias. But beware, not all scrolls in the Great Library tell the truth. Some are merely illusions meant to deceive the unwary traveler. To ensure we are building our grand quest on highly impactful, rigorous evidence, we must seek out journals strictly ranked in elite registries like the FD50, the UTD24, or the CABS Academic Journal Guide. Proper, respected scholars rely on these rigorous, peer-reviewed registries rather than easily manipulated citation indices or predatory publishers who would happily print absolute nonsense for a few gold coins. Relying on the right registries keeps our story grounded in absolute, undeniable fact. Chapter 4. Peeling the Research Onion. Which brings us to Chapter 4 and my absolute favorite part. Okay, let's dive into this. It is time to peel Mark Saunders' famous research onion. Think of the onion as a magnificent, magical planning tool for your entire methodology. The very outermost skin of this onion is ontology. This asks the biggest philosophical question of all. What is the true nature of reality? Does the kingdom operate strictly as an objective, external reality, or is it a subjective world constructed entirely by human perceptions and interactions? Let me give you a proper example. If you believe reality is objective, you might measure the exact weight of gold in the king's treasury. It exists independently of what anyone thinks about it. But if you believe it's subjective, you might study the perceived happiness of the villagers, which exists entirely within their minds and changes based on their interactions. Every single research adventure starts by making this grand assumption about how reality itself works. Right beneath that ontological skin lies epistemology. If ontology dictates what reality is, epistemology is the strict rulebook for how we can possibly know about it. It dictates what constitutes acceptable knowledge and how we, as the heroes of this tale, will interact with facts and evidence throughout our study. Returning to our kingdom, epistemology asks, is acceptable knowledge only what the king can physically see and measure with a ruler, or is it equally valid to gather knowledge by listening to the lived experiences and stories whispered by the villagers in the tavern? This choice fundamentally shapes the tools you're going to use later on. Peeling further down, we reach the research approaches. Here, you must choose your path through the dark woods. Will you take a deductive approach, starting with a grand prophecy, an existing overarching theory, and rigidly testing it from the top down to see if it holds true in your specific village? Or will you choose an inductive approach, wandering through the villages to gather qualitative ground-level clues, observing the folk, and building a brand new theory from the bottom up? The path you choose isn't a matter of one being better than the other. Rather, it depends entirely on the initial riddle you set out to solve. Chapter 5. Selecting Techniques and Procedures. Now things get really exciting. Here, our high-level philosophical musings turn into a concrete plan of attack. We select our specific strategy, our weapon of choice, if you will. And there are quite a few brilliant options in the armory. A case study allows us to explore a real-life context very deeply, almost like following a single character throughout our entire story. An experiment, on the other hand, lets us manipulate variables in a highly controlled setting to find exact cause and effect. But consider ethnography, where the brave researcher actually goes to live amongst a specific tribe of workers, immersing themselves entirely in their culture for months to understand their hidden rituals. Or action research, where the scholar works hand in hand with the local guilds to solve a problem in real time, learning and adapting as they go. The weapon must perfectly fit your quest. Next, we must decide on our time horizon, a vital decision that alters the very fabric of our adventure. Will it be a cross-sectional study, which takes a quick single snapshot of the kingdom at one solitary point in time? Or will it be a longitudinal study, where we track long-term trends and watch the kingdom change over many seasons, perhaps observing how a new law impacts the villagers over an entire decade? So the crucial point is, the time frame you select must perfectly align with what you are actually trying to find out. Rushing a longitudinal quest into a cross-sectional time frame is a surefire way to misinterpret the magic entirely. In Chapter 6, reporting the final results. At long last, we arrive at our final chapter. We have finally reached the very core of the onion. Reaching the center means all the grand planning is done, the maps are drawn, and it's time to get your hands thoroughly dirty in the soil. It takes quite a bit of elbow grease from here on out. It's the actual gritty mechanics of executing probability sampling, tirelessly handing out surveys in the village square, conducting deep interviews, and running those complex statistical analyses. Once all the clues are meticulously gathered, crunched, and interpreted, our hero writes the final, glorious report, revealing the unvarnished truth to the kingdom and guiding the ultimate management decision to save the day.
And they all researched happily ever after. Well, perhaps it takes a bit more elbow grease and late-night tea drinking than that. But you get the brilliant idea. You now possess the complete step-by-step blueprint to vanquish any academic ambiguity that crosses your path. By starting with the raw dilemma, formulating razor-sharp questions, critically reviewing the ancient texts, and carefully, methodically peeling the layers of your research onion, there is simply no problem too large or fiery to tackle. So I leave you with this final provocative thought. Now that you are fully armed with this magical methodology, what massive management dilemma are you going to solve next? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy researching!